Hi, and welcome to this video on Michal Yakir's pioneering botanical repertory, which we have in RadarOpus and is on promotion at the moment. So this is a really useful repertory if you're working with Michal's system, her botanical system, which she wrote about in The Wondrous Plants. So basically, from her many years of experience as a botanist and homeopath, Michal's brought order to the plant kingdom, which is, as we know, vast. And it's being used by homeopaths like Mahesh Gandhi, Rajan Sankaran's using the ideas with his superclasses and incorporating that with the sensation method, and Annette Sneevliet has written a wonderful book about how she's using this system. So it's allowing people to access plants in an interesting new way, and we're really happy to have it in RadarOpus. And she worked really closely with us to make sure we got all of her latest information, particularly on the non-flowering plants, which is there too. So basically this system is about looking at the evolutionary stages of plants and correlating that with the human developmental stages. Part of that is working with Erikson's theory of psychosocial development, and the other side is looking at the ego's journey, going from a sort of primary stage of union and unity to an advanced stage of individuality. And it's the combining or the integrating of the feminine and masculine elements that is really sort of unique to this system, and also links to other fundamental wisdoms like yin yang and Mapamundi approach. So it's for me a very nice system that ties in a lot of things that I love about homeopathy. And in this video I'm going to share how it works in the program, and also share a case where I've used it to prescribe. So we'll get onto that shortly. I just wanted to show you this. This is a nice page that we have on the RadarOpus.com website. So it's quite easy to get there. You go to RadarOpus.com, click on products, and then you'll find RadarOpus content, repertories, and Michal. Her repertory is there. So there's a little screenshot here. You can see behind that there's her thematic repertory there, and you can of course use the columns and rows as sort of directly dragging them into clipboards according to your understanding of the case. Now, by way of a quick introduction, let's talk about columns, subclasses, and Cronquist organization or classification system. So the Cronquist system is based on morphology, the shared characteristics of size, shape, and structure, the aspects of the biological form of the plant. Jan's system is using APG2 or 3 even rather, sorry, and that of course has its merits, but for me, if you're looking at something which is based on observed characteristics, that has a lot in common with homeopathy and how we practice. So monocots, when you're looking at the flowering plants, the monocot, as you can see here, has only one seed leaf inside the seed coat, whereas the dicots have two. There's more info at this website. And here is the overview of the flowering plants that you will know if you're accustomed to her table. These are the Erikson rows, looking at the developmental stages of the human being. And these are the subclasses of the dicotyledon plants. So we know the Magnolidae very well in homeopathy. Remedies like pulsatilla and Staphysagria and aconite and opium and Piper methysticum, magnolia, Aristolochia clemitatis, and then we know the Hamamelidae pretty well too, cannabis remedies, the urtica, and some of the tree remedies like Juglans, cinereus, etc. These are the cacti mainly, which we also know quite well. And then column 4, subclass 4, contains remedies like chocolates, bryonia, salix fragilis, and some others, well many others. All of the cruciferi are there, so they're called the caporales now. The Rosidae, very well known remedy would be rustox and anacardium and ruta, and of course conium. And then in column 6 we've got the Solanaceae, all the mint family, all of the asterales, so arnica, chamomilla, absinthe, etc. So basically the journey goes from, so at column 1 the sense of ego is small, and there's a tendency to withdraw from life and to access the the feminine realm, the what you could say a vessel. It's about containment and receiving, whereas over here there's the yang element is stronger, and there's the more masculine outward energy, inward energy withdrawing from life, outward energy going out to conquer. So this is about a process of separation of the masculine archetype, and the ego flowers and evolves through this process of gradually integrating male and female aspects. And the most sort of integrated of the two is here at column 4. So harmony is achieved through integrating the disparate elements, whereas sickness emanates from a state of separation. This is talking about individuation, which is a Jungian model, essentially. So basically we can look at the signature of the plants to sort of support this idea with the simple, primitive and open plants of the Magnolidae. You can think of the shamefaced maiden, pulsatilla, or the very open flowers of the magnolia or the lotus, and then comparing that with the highly structured daisy family of all the little flowers creating one big one in the middle, which is the idea of like the individual within the whole, reflecting the modern times we live in now. And the major theme there is ego versus the world. So you're so well established as an ego that you defend your boundaries very strongly against attacks, and so there's a lot of violence and violent symptoms in the column 6 plants. Whereas there's violence of course in opium, which is column 1, but the response is to withdraw and go numb there rather than to fight it head on. So there's a little bit of information here about Jung and the process of individuation, and and also, for me the different types come into it as well, the archetypes or the temperaments come into it. So a very simple approach here is that yin on this side and yang, increasing yang on this side. Other things you might need to know are that it's often at the level of the order which Michal speaks. So you'll see the Sapindala's order, which contains the Anacardiaceae and the Rutaceae. So we're more accustomed to talking about the families rather than the orders, so that's something to get your head around. Okay, there's a link here to give you some insight into Erikson's psychosocial development theory. Okay, well let's move on to how it looks in RadarOpus, and I've got here some slides to help explain the first 2 columns, and I'm going to share a case with you. So thanks for sticking with it. Basically, you open up the repertory and you've got 3 chapters. This is chapter number 2, which is the flowering plants. We know those a lot more. But up here we have the non-flowering plants, which contains the mosses and liverworts, the Lycopodium family here, the ferns, and then here we have the gymnosperm, which includes the Cicadophyta, the Gonetophyta, and the ones we know the best in homeopathy, the conifers. And the way the repertory works is that each group, each family contains like a flag, like you'll see in synthesis, which we call a symptom note, and in that you'll see a lot of the details explaining the themes of each plant group or each column or each row in terms of the table organization. So the flowering plants, as I said, we know better by and large, and each column has a flag which kind of gives you the main themes of each stage of development. So you can see here there's a confusion, dependency, the ego's weak, can't act on its own, there's a difficulty coping, there's a withdrawal into the sort of universal realm, you know, a lack of borders there. And we see drug remedies like opium and heroin coming here. And then, you know, and we know Magnolia and Nux moscata especially has a lot of that confusion and that sort of sleepiness. You know, can be a remedy for narcolepsy, can't it? Nux moscata. So that withdrawal from the world into a state of somnolescence or numbness or absence. Hellebore is another one that's very absent, isn't it? And then we've got column 2, which is about establishing the first border. So there's from the, you know, the starting point of the sort of feminine energy of like a womb-like energy. There's a womb-like energy too in column 2, but there's a need to start separating, and there's a feeling of not being here, so neither here nor there kind of idea, because you're only just first developing the masculine element, the sense of I, the boundary. And we know that the, you know, cannabis indica has this sort of opening and shutting of the vertex. So yeah, this idea of opening and closing comes in. And of course, at the end of column 2, I say of course, you might not know, but you have the oak family and the beech family there. So there's a need to develop a sense of responsibility and maturity that happens sort of too quickly, if you like. And it's a big challenge. And Michal talks about Sisyphean efforts. So the myth of Sisyphus having to push the boulder continually up the mountain. At column 3, the cacti, there's an element of the hero, you know, a struggle to separate from the feminine energy and to fight it. And if you know, continue the metaphor of sort of being born, you've gone here from, you know, being in the womb to needing to separate and cut the cord, if you like. So it's the very end of row 2 is the feeling here, row 2 of the periodic table, I mean. And in column 4, you sort of land in row 3 of the periodic table, which is all about the mother-child family relationships. And here, there's a ripeness of the maternal quality and an equality of male and female elements. So, you know, being nurtured yet separated, etc. So, you know, if you're using the table, this repertory will be really helpful because, you know, you've got all of the remedies, all of the plant remedies in one go, and this includes here the monocots and dicots. So in column 4, the monocots are, you know, all of the grains and grasses are included. So one can just drag and drop rubrics as with any symptom and construct a repertorization based on that. So if you detect row 1 tendencies of, you know, sort of not really being landed in the world yet, being connected more to the subconscious or, you know, the sort of mythological realm, then there's row 1 themes there, etc. And there's also a very handy themes section. This is based on the repertory given at the end of Michal's book. You can see here there, you know, symptoms like you would see in any repertory, but containing plants and plant family information. So if we go to, you know, adolescence as a quality, we see the rubiales and China, one of the main remedies there, and the primulaceae are there too. Cyclamen is sort of very known for that period of life. And row 6 in general of the plant table corresponds with this age in terms of the Ericksonian theory. So we can, you know, I can give you a quick glimpse of what's in here. There's things around attention deficit disorder, chemotherapy, cancer, chronic fatigue, sexual desire or perversity, duality, weakness of the ego or strong ego, things around erection problems, things around the father or mother, feminine quality. So it's small but perfectly formed thus far, and Michal's going to be working on the non-flowering plants too, she tells me. Okay, so that's a quick look around the repertory there. If I give you now a quick overview of the table itself, let's pull that over to about that. Looks good. So we looked at that on the website, and this as well. The idea of, you know, the inner age or the developmental stage of the patient. So at the beginning of life, row 2, that's the sort of oral phase of development where there's you know, dependence on mother and the need for like instant gratification, which fits with the Piperales family very well. You know, they're that feeling of boredom or ennui that looks for something exciting straight away, you know, a diversion, to, you know, bring back the excitement. And down here we have the old age, so, you know, a lot of trees come in here. The Fagales is the oak and beech family. Here we see the willows, and there are trees dotted around elsewhere in the table as well. This is a simplified overview from Jörg Wichmann, looking at the, you know, this idea of withdrawal into wholeness, loss of wholeness in column 2, refusal of it, fighting it in column 3. Then you start to nurture the individual. Then it's about sharing the individual. So the kind of love relationship comes in here, and we have, of course, the Rose family, very much associated with love. And here, the Asteridae, it's about defending individuality. It's a fight where you get battered and bruised and you need arnica. So for me, I can link it to the temperaments from the Mappamundi, which I don't have time to do now. This is a map that I made to show how that works, the journey that is made. So the phlegmatic type, you know, has no borders also, and is, you know, in that way linked with the womb, you know, and the state of unification. And in the melancholic temperament, the sensation is of being bound or compressed or contracting, which really fits with the sensation of the Hamamelidae. And then, of course, the expansion that we know of the cacti fits with the sanguine, and that's how it goes. So I'm not going to spend too long on it now. You can look at the types of plants and their associations in this way as well. This is really just giving you a quick idea. There's a lot to say. There's a lot one can say, but you know, I don't want to be here all day, and neither do you, I'm sure. Looking at the different foods from each group, and looking at the different drugs from each group. This can all lead to insights into how the table works. So column 1 essentially is where there's a feminine watery quality. It's an initiation of the creative energy, and without a vessel, without borders, there's chaos, no order, confusion, and weakness and dependency and naivety. Think pulsatilla, yeah? Seeking protection. And, you know, in terms of Rajan's work, we have the Magnolianae, which covers a group of other smaller orders, plant orders. And the feeling is confusion, bewildered. It's so strange, you know, not a part of it, and to withdraw from it. So camphor is part of this group. So the active reactions to withdraw, create the own world, shutting out the outside world. We have the Piperaceae. It's, you know, pain, boredom, no excitement, and so they react by looking for amusement, looking for a diversion, a change. They want it straight away. The Ranunculaceae, it's, you know, so sensitive that the skin hasn't really developed, so the sensory nerve endings are raw and exposed, and all these emotions hit them, and they somatize the complaints. And with the Papaveraceae, it's like intense pain and torture, which leads you to complete sort of narcolepsy, fainting, hibernation, meditation, and the other side here. Okay, so the drug remedies could be easily confused here, and water remedies generally. So it's a lot like, row 1 and the left side of row 2. So column 2, which I want to focus on more, and which fits with the case I want to show you, is about creating the first border or boundary and feeling ungrounded because you're neither here nor there. You've left the wholeness of column 1, the sort of the universal feeling that you get from mother energy, and you're trying to withstand the challenge and cover that weakness, and it's like a Sisyphean effort. You feel like you're never getting anywhere, and that leads to a lot of exhaustion because the borders are only just awaken this tingling, formication, numbness that is felt on the skin. So it correlates with the Bronze Age, where we first started to manipulate the earth, and it's about, in that way, the first construction of the mind, the beginning of agriculture. And the melancholic type is closed and contracted, as I said, detached and wise, old and stiff, philosophical, cynical. Really corresponds with oak. And the Hamamelidae sensation is heavy, pressing, low, limited. So a lot of those earthy kind of sensations, whereas the opposite is light, flying, free, expanding. So it kind of corresponds with the womb experienced of, on the one hand, being closed and shut in and confined, and on the other, there's lightness and floating and free. So quite similar to the bird sensation too. Okay. Yeah, oak. We can look at the Madeline Evans provings. We can look at the Bach Flower, which we have in RadarOpus, which can be very useful when combined with the Botanical Repertory. So this, people who do not learn lessons easily and keep repeating the same experiences, that's Sisyphus in mythology. So oak feels very weighed down by burden and responsibility. Okay, so let's just move that back over here. And I want to share with you a case example, which I will try to be brief on. Okay, so the cases of dysmenorrhea, painful menstruation, and yeah, it's a patient I've seen a number of times, given different remedies to, which have helped, and obviously not got there completely. And the patient, I've pulled out some of the most interesting turns of phrase, the expression of the patient, and it's not just that it's dysmenorrhea, that's part of it, but it's a depression essentially, and this comes around through feeling a lot of responsibility and being overwhelmed by that. Okay, there's a lack of aliveness. This jumps around, of course, but feeling like the mediator, parents being dysfunctional from a young age, and I became the go-between. If I didn't have my dog, I would just stay in bed all day. It's pointless, hopeless. Within that, there's an anchoring and dredging up of the past, like a looking back and start to think from this lack. I'm nearly 40. What am I doing? What's the point? Just question my whole existence. It's heaviness, physically and energetically. Foggy. It's a shit show of self-deprecation. In nature, I feel like I'm being held in a little womb. Now, that's very interesting, considering the correlation with the womb stage and with row 2 of the periodic table that we have in terms of the sensation of column 2 in the plant. So nothing feels joyful. There's heaviness, responsibility, lack of energy, an anchoring feeling, a lack of aliveness, and a looking back. And what age do you start looking back at? It's old age, It's not the experience of one of the much earlier stages like baby or toddler. So I feel like I'm failing him, taking on the responsibility. That's column 2. But also the experience of adult or someone with an older age. And there's this need to step into a more structured masculine space which holds creativity. That allows me to align, feeling responsible. There's also a sense of being passive or submissive, but that it's not safe to be in my emotions or to be in too much feminine chaos. So you can see here there's the column 1 language as well, but there's a sense that of having to build the masculine energy, which is exactly what is felt at column 2. There's a feeling that her crown was huge, and we remember the cannabis indica feeling of the vertex opening and shutting, feeling high, feeling like you need to develop a boundary, but then also having the hearty, open, soft, loving spaciousness of the feminine side. Okay, so there's even the patient is talking in terms of the themes of the table, the feminine, masculine elements, and I haven't asked her to talk in that way. That's just the way her consciousness is working. So yeah, it's a fantastic tool, especially for cases which are at a predominantly psychological level. Okay, this idea that column 2 is the first construction of the mind really fits here. You know, my mind wants to instantly fix it. Okay, and there's a connection, but not in an ungrounded way. So she doesn't want it to be ungrounded. Ungrounded is the feeling of column 2. So parents are like teenagers. She's the adult in the relationship with her parents. So with this particular case taking, there was not much at the level of sensation. There was a lot more at the kind of human level, the level of sort of evolution, if you like. But if I click here, I can see all of the consultations where I've marked something in grade 4. You can see the other remedies here, like argon was prescribed. And Jeremy Sher talks about argon having a relationship to trees in his excellent book on argon. So if we look here, you know, ungrounded again in another dimension. This is the cannabis family language. Contracted, constricted. Dragging, vulnerable, latched onto you, pulling you down, feeling unworthy. Okay? So there were kind of hints to it in the earlier consultations. If I click here on 3, I can see everything grade 3 in all the consultations. So there's a need to be strong and brave. Column 2. Heavy. Safe and protected. So womb kind of language again. Warm and soft. Too much pressure, having to perform when energy is low. That's a column 2 thing. You know, I didn't know this at the time, hence not prescribing a tree remedy, even though she was talking about trees at the time. And then I can also look at all of the grade 2 symptoms or expressions and see what there was in earlier consultations. So yeah, let's see. Joy is flow. So people at row 8 of the table, or row 8 or 9, they feel a lack of flow because they're at the old age stage where things start to dry up. So you could see here flow versus obstacles. You could think cruciferi family if you're working in sensation level, but you can also think of row 8 and row 9 in the periodic, in the plant table now too. So if we look at the repertorization, then all I needed to do was take column 2 and row 8 into my clipboard, and then I can see the Fagales family and all of those remedies. I can even take some of the theme rubrics, so borders or boundaries, inability to cope, difficult to follow or decide upon objectives and responsibility. So we see row 8, column 2 there coming up. Okay, so let me just look. Oh yeah, yeah. So the remedy I prescribed was hornbeam, which we can see here, Carpinus betulus. Because I didn't feel it was so heavy as oak. Let's see. And you can search for this in all of the documents. And if you have added the Bach Flower documents, you'll see some very interesting material there. Over here in other therapies. So here, if I double click, I can go to the actual document here. And this is by Richardson Birdley, Cornelia. So you can see it's about suffering uncertainty, and what we've got here is a remedy that covers a lot of the aspects of this case. So feeling weary, uninvigorated, not sharpened, doesn't attend to their duties, real lack of incentive, not taking responsibility, depression, boredom, indolence. Feels better once tasks have been started and as the day advances, but the lack of power of perseverance. There's also an interesting entry from Ton Janssen, another book that's on offer at the moment. Interestingly, the uterus is part of the keywords for him. It's about developing resources, making preparations. They're modest. They find it difficult to take up space, but if they manage to grow and develop, then they really stand tall and can shelter others. There's the responsibility. Okay, so that was my case. The remedy was hornbeam. I used the Bach Flower as a guide, as well as Michal's. The patient got a large mouth ulcer which disappeared after 2 days. The remedy was repeated every other day in an LM8 potency. They felt lighter physically and emotionally, and the remedy was clearing things at a deep level. When the state of exhaustion seemed to return around the time of menses, the remedy was repeated more often, and overall it helped to balance the disruption in their energy levels around that time. So that's it. Thank you for watching. See you again soon.